Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Well, after the sun has set on what was an incredible race at Sebring last time around in the Apex this Mazda Cup Series, with a lot of overtaking happening during regulation under green flag conditions, we go across the sea over to the Netherlands to a track where, well, you see it right now, qualifying going down, and it is going to be very important where these drivers end up. We're at the tight and technical ZANDVOORT, and it is round number 7 of the Apex this Mazda Cup Sunday Series. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name Mac Nelson. I'll be your lead commentator here tonight, pushing all the buttons, making everything look all pretty. There's going to be Rob Campbell here in the booth. And Rob, man, haven't got to link up with you here in a while, but it's been amazing here. ZANDVOORT 2.61 miles. What do you think we're going to see here tonight?
Well, it's one of those FIA type grade 1 F1 tracks, Max, so I don't expect a whole lot of calamity, as that means it's generally fairly wide. Not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities here at ZANDVOORT. So as you mentioned, they're in qualifying now, so that's going to be the utmost importance here. These drivers are going to want to fit their car in the grid up towards the sharp end of the field here, as it's going to be tough. Other than really turn 1, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to make any moves around here.
Yeah, I agree. Very long straight coming off the very banked double right-hander, going on to the front straight. Like I said, though, ladies and gentlemen, we are in round number 7. We'll take a look at how the rest of the schedule pans out. I take it back. We're on round number 8, first error of the night. Oopsies. Round number 9 going to be St. Petersburg. That comes next week. Last season, we saw an incredible race there. Cannot wait to see it again. And then it's a doubleheader in Italy, first in the Emilia-Romagna region, when we take to Imola. That will be on August the 23rd, followed up by Monza on round number 11. That will be August the 30th. Before we see probably the best track for these Mazda Miatas when it comes to the Apex this Mazda Cup Series. Last season, we saw an incredible barn burner with Joshua Soto claiming race number 2 at Spa-Francorchamps. And that is where we end the season for round number 12. Going to your championship points, the championship standings. Your Pro Series looks very, very close with the 421 of Michael Brock in the lead with 209 points, but only 9 points behind is going to be the newly crowned number 13, Charles Wolf. Don't be alarmed. We saw him in the 00 for most of the season, changing to the number 13 now. Brian Lemke, who, if I'm not mistaken, is not going to be here again tonight. He sits in P3 in that championship hunt. Tony Wallace and Ryan Ryder both on incredible form this far, or last couple of weeks, I apologize. Before we head down to Joshua Soto, Spencer Beaudoin, Thomas Lathrop, Sean Gapinski, and former mid-pack Larry champion of last season, Nick Belasco, rounding out the top 10. Over to your mid-pack Larry, Sean Teeter, and that number 117 on 204 points. Before we get to Jonathan Cooper in the number 77, the Canadian driver, he sits 12 points behind. Jay Smooth, Joshua Smith, in the number 235, sitting only 12 points behind Cooper, before we get only 11 points behind him to the Vans 305 of Christopher Croteau, Michael Tanagretta, that MAV Motorsport driver, rounding out the top 5. And then we see Harrison Mealy, Aaron Law, Keegan Garrick, Corey Mitchell, and Pat Wilson rounding out that top 10.
Yeah, for note, anybody watching, any driver that didn't have a colored number board beside them are not in session. So as you saw there, Mac, number of drivers have an opportunity to snatch away some points here in that championship battle.
Yeah, very, very important here that you get a good result while the competition is unfortunately going to be at its lowest. Over on the pro side, just a few names we're not seeing: Brian Lemke, Joshua Soto, and then in the mid-pack Larrys, I believe they had a little bit better attendance here tonight. Those guys obviously vying for those championship points. They would love to be running in that pro series. Just north of 2 minutes remaining here in qualifying, and Charles Wolf is going to be at the top of the board with a 151.812. Michael Brock just now with that second lap getting up to P2 in the standings, 151.867 for him. Tony Wallace, who in the past few weeks, he has been absolutely lights out here as the Dr. Pepper 78, running a 151.881 as his best lap. And very, very cool to see Tony Wallace, Nick Belasco. I know iRating isn't everything, and I know the iRacing official service is quite hard on the drivers who don't necessarily run officials every single day. It's kind of hard to get your iRating up, as Nick Belasco is going to take a run through the grass there. But Tony Wallace on 2,900 iRating, Nick Belasco on 1,600. These guys being in that pro series and running with these titans like Charles Wolf, Michael Brock, Brian Lemke, Joshua Soto, not only competing with them, but sometimes ascending the grid just a little further than they do, like at Road Atlanta earlier this season. It's really cool to see that, Rob.
Yeah, you get a nice mix of the drivers. I guess in qualifying, it's a little different, right? Because you're out there alone on the track, so you're putting in your best lap. It's not really all that surprising when we get into the race session. These Mazdas just draft so well with no roof and no rear window on them, just open a huge hole in the air for that driver and behind them to tuck in behind. So it's a little less surprising in the race situation to see the drivers, the mid-pack Larrys, mix it up with the pros. But as you mentioned, see some of the mid-pack Larry drivers up into the top 5, as it is Kenton Bandy right now, our top mid-pack Larry driver, currently just sitting there in the pits, but he's sitting in 5th overall. Nice qualifying run for him.
Yeah, and that kind of touches to your point with the roster we have here tonight, with the lack of attendance, I should say. These mid-pack Larrys are going to have a very good opportunity in getting some, overall ascension in the grid. I know, not really going to be many bonus points for, beating X amount of pros or getting in a certain point overall, but it's going to feel good, and it's going to make these drivers feel very confident heading into the last little stint of our season.
Absolutely.
Heading into... Oh, sorry about that, Rob. Heading into your starting grid for the race here tonight. Drivers gridding up. Charles Wolf is going to be claiming that pole position in the number 13. Michael Brock in the 421 going to be starting outside row number 1. Row number 2 is going to see the muscle man, Tony Wallace, in the Dr. Pepper 78, sitting in P3 with Nick Belasco in P4. Kenton Bandy in the number 87, and Kevin Zhu, part of St. Kitts and Nevis, that's who he reps. That's going to be row number 3. Joe Mayer in the 000 and Sean Teeter in the 117 are going to make up row number 4. Before we get to Corey Mitchell and Jay Smooth, part of Okra Slime Time Racing, finishing out your top 10. Row number 6 sees Ryan Ryder in the 181, Dylan Foster in the 818. Wow, that's a little bit of parody for you. P13, Craig Thompson P14, Harrison Mealy, he needs to have a good performance here tonight. Been a little lackluster for him over these past few weeks. Aaron Law in the 468, starting in P15. Christopher Croto in the Vans, 305, starting in P16. Spencer Beaudoin in the 010, starting P17. In the Bonetta number 9, Brad Parker in P18. Michael Tanagretto, we touched on him a little earlier in the championship standings. Not going to be his greatest qualifying performance here tonight. He starts P19 with Matt Bond in the pink Rexy, starting in P20. Row number 11 sees Paul Bailey and Thomas Lathrop, with row number 12 being Jack Stodola and Rick Wishon. Both of those drivers, and Thomas Lathrop as well, not putting in any times.
Looks like we're just waiting for a couple drivers here, Mac, to grid up. Actually, just one driver now, Rick Wishon, who didn't put a time in qualifying. So we'll see if maybe he's going for a pit lane start here. We're going to start at the back, but to welcome in Perfect Jen and Cameron Frederick into the chat. You've all made it just in time.
Yes, sir. Love the support we get in the chat every week from the regulars like Jen. Unfortunately, not going to be able to see Cameron Frederick on the track here tonight. It's always a joy watching him race, and you get a shot there of the drivers gridding up. Beautiful shots here coming from none other than Track Cams for Gourmets. That's trackcams22.com. They provide all the car and track cameras that you see here tonight and across all of the Racer Nexus broadcasts, man. Incredible shots there. And Zandvoort, just all in all, is a beautiful track. I don't think it's gotten any visual refreshment over the past few months like they have been doing to a lot of the dirt and asphalt oval circuits, but I think that just speaks to the beauty of the track even more. iRacing development team absolutely cooked with this one.
I'm trying to remember when they did it. It was a while, well, I shouldn't say a while back. It seems like a while back now with how often iRacing has been doing, I don't want to say an update to the track, but their graphical updates where they're updating the signs and so forth. But I think Zandvoort got a refresh, I want to say probably close to about 2 years ago now, Mac, shortly after they updated those a couple corners that are kind of like NASCAR banked corners. The final corner, I think it's called like Lion Dyke Curve or something now. So it's been a little while, but yeah, it's one of the better looking tracks, especially with the grandstands and the elevation changes here. But it's a tough track to pass, so those qualifying positions, as I mentioned earlier, are going to be important here for the drivers that start at the front to stay up there.
Yeah, all these corner names are in Dutch, man, and I'm just not going to embarrass myself with trying to pronounce those, so we're going to be sticking to numbers here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, going to be incredible to see exactly how these drivers can coincide with the tight technical parts of this racetrack. Also, I think it's fair to note that although the track is wide, the amount of power that these cars can actually put down, or I guess the lack thereof, I should say, I think that's going to be the main decider. Obviously, you know, the track, it seems pretty natural. You know, you want to stick to the inside. There's really no sweeping corners. The outside line is never really going to be too optimal here. But when you're in a high power car, you can make something like that work because there's a lot more, you know, throttle brake discrepancy into those corners. But, you know, just playing onto it, yeah, going to be very, very hard. As we take a look at the current conditions, temperature going to be 80 degrees in the air, track temperature 109 degrees. It is going to be hot. Humidity 31%, quite windy as well, which haven't really got down to the brass tacks on how the wind really affects an iRacing in the official service here, so can't really speak on that behalf. But man, I can speak on a hot track, and that is not going to be pleasant to race on.
No, it's easy to start cooking your tires at track temps like that, and we'll see with these Mazdas. They don't have an overly wide tire, Max. You really have to throw it into a corner to get some grip, so that'll heat up those tires really quick. But thankfully, we're only doing 2 20-minute heats here, so the driver should be okay, barring a couple spins. But looks like we're getting onto the front straight here now.
Yep, iRacing official. Pace car about to make its way into the safety of the pit lane. There's the long straight we talked about just a little bit earlier. These cars aren't necessarily as loud as a Formula One car that you might see here racing in around September, I think is when they are. But here they go, green flag in the air. Shout out to Barney the Flag Man, and we are going to get underway. First of two 20-minute heats. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be inverting the top four. Nick Velasco on the brakes just a little bit early. Kevin Zhu going to get involved there.
It's like the whole field got through turn
2
one.
and 3. Yeah, very, very surprising, barring just a little bit of contact there between Velasco and Zhu. But Charles Wolf in the number 13, looking very, very good so far. It was a drag race down to turn number 2 between him and Michael Brock, but somehow, I guess maybe Michael Brock on the brakes, maybe just a little too hard. Kevin Zhu now prepping a move on the outside of Tony Wallace there through our extended S's into turns number 5 and 6, I believe here. Kevin Zhu going to be on that suboptimal outside, going to be dipping the left side into the sand just a tiny bit before we get into our second sector of the racetrack. And Nick Velasco playing a very conservative line here, kind of hugging that inside lane, which makes sense here. Cold tires, first lap. Nobody's going to be really gunning it around the outside, pinning that momentum to the floor. And yeah, like you said, turn number 1, drivers are getting through safe, and surprisingly, no calamity, no chaos thus far.
Yeah, well, I guess we're getting into the meat of the back half of the season here, Mac, where championships are going to start to be a little more on the line, so you don't necessarily want to throw away any points that you weren't particularly looking to throw away. And speaking of points, our 2 points leaders in the pro class, Charles Wolf and Michael Brock, even this one I think was only separated by about 9 points, and right now Charles Wolf leading the race right now ahead of Michael Brock. So Michael Brock could want to try and find some pace here. He'd love to get back around Charles Wolf and not have the gap even tighter into the second race here this evening.
Yeah, but Michael Brock has got a little bit of a problem, and it will be the Dr. Pepper 78 behind him. I mean, Tony Wallace has been red hot these past 3 weeks, even claiming a win last week at Sebring. And you know, no disrespect to Tony Wallace, but that is something we were not used to seeing. So he has upped his game. I don't know if it's the training regime. I don't know if something has just clicked with him, but he is a legitimate force that you have got to look out for. Another legitimate force here, Sean Teeter in the 117. Man, the battles that him and Nick Velasco, the car just ahead of him, had last season, season number 27. They were both in the mid-pack Larry class. Nick Velasco winning the championship, meaning he gets elevated into that Pro Series. And just like old times, Rob, these guys are going at it.
They are. You love to see it. Kenton Bandy, unfortunately, was our pole sitter, mid-pack Larry class. He's fallen back a couple spots into 8th place, so rough start of the race for him, but he's still got another 16:45 or so left to try and get himself up there. But we got some battles further back. Let's hop back through the field here. We got Corey Mitchell in behind Ryan Ryder. That's a battle for 11th and 12th overall. Corey currently our 5th place mid-pack Larry driver, so nice run for him. We got a Corey Mitchell debut song to play during the warm-up, something he made up that he sent over, wanted me to play. It's a whole theme with the whole Apex, this 28 seasons long preaching that they do every week, holding the brakes. So Corey's made up a song about it.
I cannot wait to hear that. I'm sure as all the viewers are as well. Joe Mayer there in the 000, facing a little bit of pressure behind him. That's going to come in the form of Joshua Smith and Kenton Bandy. Kenton Bandy, Rob just touched on it, not the ideal start for him. He is going to be on the right side of that track, looking to get optimal position down into turn number 1, but whoa, going to be a little slow for him, hugging a little too much of that curbing, as Ryan Ryder now is able to maybe stick the nose in turns 2 and 3, but yeah, like you said, Rob, going to be really hard to overtake here. And I mean, we're just seeing it, these drivers making mistakes. And oh, speaking of, Brad Parker in the Benetton number 9, going to be making a mistake there coming into turn number 3. Go back and take a look.
Oh, looks like he had a little help from the 406 at Jack Stadola on his inside.
Yeah, and Jack Stadola really nowhere to go, unfortunately. I think maybe Brad Parker wasn't fully aware that the car was there. Michael Brock now being very heavily influenced by Tony Wallace. Seems like Michael Brock having to defend his position very, very heavily here. And Rob, this is something, I know we've only got a 20-minute race to deal with here. Well, actually 2 20-minute races, but inside of one, you don't have a lot of time to really make positions up. So when you're this early on having to defend so hard, you know, how's that feel for the driver?
It's tough, you know. That's why we're seeing a lot of drivers really jockeying around. You don't have much time to really bide your time here, Mac, where you'd see in a lot of the other races we cover are generally, you know, 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little over an hour, where you have that little bit of space where you can kind of get into a rhythm, find your groove at the start of the race. You just don't have that with these 2 20-minute, I don't even want to call them sprint races, because they're even shorter than that. They're like just all out battle war here for the first 20 minutes. And again, the top 4 will invert into race number 2. So Charles Wolfe, Michael Brock, Tony Wallace, Kevin Zhu would switch spots here if they finish that way. Nick Blasco, he's off track, losing a ton of spots. That's going to be rough for him.
Yeah, not ideal. And what we were looking at right before that was the big kind of cluster of cars. You can see it just in front of Nick Blasco there, as he is going to maybe drop another spot to the 468 of Aaron Law. We'll take another look here. Currently looking at Kenton Bandy in the number 87, and just a little too hard, a little too fast into the corner there. Rear end gonna step out, manages to save it though. We'll take a look at what happened to Nick Velasco here in the number 11. Probably gonna be just, oh no, a little bit of an assistance from Sean Teeter in the 117. He almost had it saved, but a little bit of an overcorrection manages to put him back onto the sand. And you said barring a couple spins might eat these tires up, and I think we might see it. I mean, 107-degree track temperature. You start balding these tires, you start spinning out, you start making them work overtime, it is not going to be very good for the rest of the race.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be hurting on those tires. They're going to be screaming, but we got to move here. Spencer Bodway looking to the inside of Harrison Mealy. He's going to make that stick, but you know what? I think Sean Teeter didn't really have much opportunity there to try and make his way around Belasco. It looks like Belasco kind of overdrove into the corner, missed his braking marker, tried to get it stopped up so he didn't slide off track, and unfortunately Sean Teeter was right there. That's just one of those, you know, I would say happy incidences, I guess, if you're racing Mazdas, where they're just so close. The draft is just so strong, especially at a track like this, Mac, where you don't really have a whole lot of heavy braking sections, a lot of sweeping corners, fast corners, where you can't really break that draft, so the drivers are going to be right up on you, and one little mistake, and unfortunately there's nowhere for that driver behind you to go.
Yeah, 100% agree. Going to be very, very difficult to deal with that. The 818 of Dylan Foster, that M&M making me hungry, but he is in a big cluster of cars here. The Vans 305 of Christopher Croto kind of keeping that cluster of 3 at bay as we head into turn number 3 again. Around the outside is going to be that 818 of Foster. He's going to get around Kenton Bandy, and I hate to keep touching on it, Rob, but Kenton Bandy in the number 87 just has not been the ideal start for him in race number 1.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. He's excellent qualifying start, put him up in 5th place, I believe it was. He's fallen back all the way now to 16th place. So I wonder if maybe he got some damage somewhere, Mac. His car doesn't look banged up, other than he had that incident into turn 1 a little bit ago, but looked like he only maybe lost 1 spot out of that. So we'll see if maybe he can regroup here for race number 2, find that pace that he lost in this one, and regroup that, or regather that pace that he had in qualifying here and mount a charge. But it looks like up front, Charles Wolfe is getting reeled in by his teammate Tony Wallace, who's gotten around Michael Brock. So that's not going to bode well for our points leader, Michael Brock here. That's going to give Charles Wolfe a couple more points to close that gap.
Yeah, I agree. And Tony Wallace, I wanted to touch on it just a second ago. He had the fastest lap of the race and then busted it with another time as well. This time going to be a 1:51.554. So the 78 of Tony Wallace easily going to be your quickest car on track. And if you're Charles Wolfe, I know, being on the iRacing official service, hearing that the car in P2 has set, that robotic Jeff or Jared or, whoever the iRacing has named them, but going to be very annoying. Charles Wolfe, I'm sure, feeling that pressure.
And speaking of pressure, Sean Teeter pressuring Ryan Ryder here on the outside, but fortunately for Ryder, it switches back to the inside for him. Teeter going to pull back in behind him. I wonder if Teeter might be impacted a little bit by that front end damage that he got off the back of Belasco. See the front end of his bumper kind of crunched in a little bit. Joseph Marr, though, he's been able to open up a gap over these drivers here, Mac. He's got himself up into 5th place now, so nice run for Joseph Marr. He's up 2 spots where he qualified. If he can hold on to that, it'd be a nice notch on his belt here this evening.
Yeah, without a doubt. Unfortunately for him, it's going to be about 4 seconds up the road until he catches that 243 of Kevin Zhu. So for Joe Marr, he might just have to kind of deal with this P5, defend his position as is, and cash in on a top 5 as we head into race 2. But just north of 9 minutes remaining there, you see Michael Tannegretta in the number 200 Mazda Miata, looking very, very solid for the hand that he was dealt. Did not set the best of qualifying, going to be at 19. He's up 1 spot into P18. And Christopher Croto now, who is in focus, going to be dealing from a lot of pressure in the form of Nick Belasco here.
Belasco making the move on his inside. We saw that spin that he, well, I guess not spin, he went off track earlier, Max. So we know he has the pace. He was up battling towards the sharp end, the pointy end of the field here. So he's unfortunately mired in behind this pack of cars. I think last I counted, there was about 9 or 10 cars in this pack that stretches from, I believe it is Harrison Mealy, all the way back to Michael Tannegretta on the tail end of the pack. So they're going 4 wide into turn 1.
Oh man, this could only end one way, and unfortunately I think it might be in calamity as the Vans 305 is going to go around, and then the gray Miata there. Nick Belasco has also ended up around. Oh no, Harrison Mealy in the 017 going to be on the big losing end of that exchange, as well as Christopher Croto. You can see him. Michael Tannegretta, I believe, has some damage as well. Oh no, yeah. Oh, Nick Belasco just getting smeared there coming out of turn number 1. It wasn't Michael Tannegretta, I don't believe. I believe it might have been the Vans 305 that we were seeing there with the damage. So, I take it back. Yeah,
damage, yeah.
Yeah, on the front end there, he is going to have a front bumper delete mod on that Mazda Miata. We'll take another look, and he seemed pretty far away from the chaos. Love to see what happened here, as there you see the initial collision there on the higher line of the racetrack there, left side of your screen. That's going to take Croto out of the play, and then Mealy starts into a spin. Yeah, he's going to just run into Mealy. Not really anywhere to go for him, and there's the bumper coming off, and good work by Aaron Law there in the 468 to kind of stay away from that mess, stay away from that battle. Now you see Thomas Lathrop here, who is P9 overall, going to be up 13 spots. And he is your biggest mover of the race. Unfortunately, biggest mover in the other direction is going to be 13 in the red for Nick Belasco there. So a lot of parity here, Rob. Drivers moving up, drivers moving down, but what remains the same is Charles Wolf started the race on pole, still leading this thing, and he is looking mighty fine for a race 1 win here today.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself as you were going over that last battle, Mac. I think the last time I did a show on the Mazdas here was a few weeks back doing the VIR race, and I want to say, I think Michael Brock was leading both heats, and Brian Lemke, I think, got him on the last lap, or it was the other way around. Lemke got Brock, or sorry, Brock got Lemke. I can't remember what it was. I'll have to. Maybe Perfect Jen will remember in chat. And I think maybe Michael Brock might be setting himself up here for a last lap move, as it always seems to be the 3rd place car in the line here in the Mazdas gets the most draft. They can really take advantage of it. So we'll keep our eye here on Michael Brock with only about 3 laps to go left in this race. He is tucked in behind those 2 teammates, so we know they're going to do everything they can to try and keep him in behind, Mac, but can he get enough draft off those 2 cars to really launch them ahead and force the hand?
Yeah, and it seems like through this second sector, starting our last sector, Michael Brock seems to be struggling. Sector 1, turns 1 through 6. He seems to have a very good handle on, but then when we get into the latter half of the lap, he starts to lose a little bit, and he might not be as quick as Tony Wallace and Charles Wolfe here. So unfortunately for him, he is really going to have to shape the back half of that lap up if he wants to, like you said, get in a position to be able to draft and maybe overtake on that last lap. Pull a little Joshua Soto, as I like to call it. Soto in that 07, so good at securing those last lap overtakes. We saw it at Spa, we saw it at Road Atlanta, and we see it pretty much every single week from him when he's racing. But he's been out for a couple weeks now, so it's very sad to see. Hope to see Soto and the others getting back to that good attendance record. Joe Marr here taking the top side into turns number 2 and 3, but Ryan Ryder in the 181, he is the driver that is never afraid to get his elbows out. He will always fight for a position, and he's fighting Sean Teeter right now. Sean Teeter forced over on the left side of that track. And although he is taking the outside here, he's actually going to have probably way more momentum to carry through these 2 high-speed corners than Ryan Ryder. And that's going to be very, very beneficial for Sean Teeter. But Ryan Ryder doing a fantastic job placing his car where it needs to be to defend the position. And at the end of the day, that's all you got to do. You just got to make sure the car stays behind you. Here's Thomas Lathrop taking the second line into the uncambered left turn here before our second DRS zone, if we were in a DRS car. But unfortunately, I don't make the rules. These Mazda Miatas not going to have DRS.
Yeah, throw a little 50-shot NOS bottle in the trunk, Mac, and send them out there on track. See what they can do. But we got to give a shout-out here to Gabriel Moreno Jr. Normally we see him out on track here on Sundays, but he's in chat cheering on Thomas Lathrop. And Lathrop, I think, was one of our lone drivers not qualifying. He started the back up 15 spots now as it is back. But we got Michael Brock challenging P2 up ahead. He's going to move around. Tony Wallace got himself back up into P2. He's now the meat in the MAV Motorsports sandwich.
Yeah, very warm welcome to Gregorio Almereno Jr., someone who you love seeing out on track. Good to see that these drivers, when they can't make the race, they are watching their compatriots, they're watching their peers take to the track. Michael Brock, Charles Wolfe, and Tony Wallace having a 3-headed horse race here, and they are just killing it here. And you don't typically see that here at Zandvoort. Like you said, hard overtaking track, and it usually results in a little bit of stringing out of the grid. And I mean, it's playing perfect for the, I'd say back half of the grid. We have a 9-second gap here, a couple 1 second, a 2 second gap. And then behind Tony Wallace, we have an 8-second gap back to Kevin Zhu. But these 3 staying packed in like sardines here, trying everything they can to get around. Brock going to try to stretch past Charles Wolfe in that number 13. We head into the very technical, got to be the 2 hardest corners on the circuit here. The right, left, it's not really a chicane, but it kind of races like a chicane. You go into a low-speed right-hander and immediate hairpin to the left, and very, very tricky to get right. And that is the corner that I think Michael Brock might be, fluffing up the most on the latter half of this lap, like I talked about earlier. But that time around seemed very, very good. And there's Barney the flag man waving the white flag, and it seems like we just got started, Rob, but we're gonna have one more time around as we're weaving on the straight here. You're typically not gonna see that, and that typically doesn't really fly in most rules and regulations. Not really sure what the point was there for Charles Wolfe. He's gonna drop that position to Michael Brock, and into turns number 2 and 3, they're gonna be packed in. Big contact there between Brock and Charles Wolfe. They are fighting, the fishtailing for Michael Brock in the 421. No harm, no foul. We're going to keep racing. Tony Wallace now in a drag race with Brock here through turns number 4 and 5.
Oh, man, that is door-to-door action here, Mac, on the final lap. Michael Brock made his move, but unfortunately had that squirrely out of turn 3, I think it was, had to gather it up. But You know, it might have been his shot there. Not really any great overtaking opportunity here unless he forces a mistake from Wallace or Wolf. So we'll see here if he can do that. But I think that was his shot here. Looks like Charles Wolf, barring a mistake, going to take this one home as we see Tony Wallace going real wide through that corner to arc it in. Try and gain as much momentum as he can exiting that corner. He might take a shot here at Charles Wolf before long.
Yeah, I was going to say, I immediately thought, the thought that went through my head was, why is he arcing that far for that corner?
Oh.
But he managed to get a big run. Charles Wolf with a big blunder there into that hairpin left that we just talked about last lap. 78 at Tony Wallace now going to get around 2 more corners before our front straight. And then it is the checkered flag. Michael Brock, unfortunately, I don't think is really going to have a dog in this fight. I think it's going to be up to Tony Wallace and Charles Wolf. The Miata just might not be fast enough to make up for the difference coming through the line. And it's going to be Wallace who gets it. A second straight win for Tony Wallace. Charles Wolf and Michael Brock will follow. Still action on the track here as we're looking at Thomas Lathrop in the number 84. He is going to claim the final top 5 spot for that Pro Series. Sean Teeter crosses the line as the winner of your mid-pack Larry's. Jack Stodola in the 406 going to be rounding out the rostrum for that mid-pack Larry division. Michael Tanagretta, I forgot we were finished for a second. That kind of scared me just a little bit. Harrison Mealy in the 017 coming around the final corner. Not going to be the greatest of days for him. He is going to place P10 in class, but he had a lot of errors, a lot of struggles here in race number 1. He'll look to tidy that up for the second race. Paul Bailey in the 569 coming around before we see Corey Mitchell in the 63, and I believe that will be our final running driver. Oh man, what a race here for race number 1, Rob.
Yeah, we had tons of action in that one, Mac, and a number of drivers who qualified well, but the race didn't quite go their way. But you know what? Luckily for them, they have another 20 minutes coming up where they can take and battle it all over again. But let's take a look at our pro results where we saw Charles Wolf take the win ahead of Michael Brock and Tony Wallace. Nick Belasco going to come home in 4th in class. So all in all, that wasn't a bad run for him after all those incidents we saw, Mac. But Kevin Zhu going to come home in 5th with Marr, Ryder, Baudouin, and Lathrop rounding out the class here. And then that's in qualifying. Let's take a look at the proper results here. Wallace over Wolf and Brock. Kevin Zhu finishes in 4th. Thomas Lathrop in 5th with Ryder, Marr, Baudouin, and Belasco. I was going to say Belasco didn't finish that well. So that looks a little better. How's it look over in mid-pack Larry's?
Well, we had Sean Teeter in the Monster Energy 117. He is going to claim a victory. Jay Smooth going to be coming home in that silver step of the rostrum with Jack Stodola in P3, going to be his first podium finish, I believe. I could be mistaken on that, so I do apologize if I'm wrong. Kenton Bandy, the number 87, going to be bringing home P4 before we see Craig Thompson, Christopher Croto, Michael Tanagretta, Aaron Law, Matt Bond, Harrison Mealy rounds out your top 10. We see Paul Bailey, Corey Mitchell, Dylan Foster, Brad Parker, and Rick Wishon actually did not take to the track, so unfortunately not going to be in heat race number 1 here.
Yeah, we'll see if he grids up for race number 2. But as mentioned, we do have our world premiere here of Corey Mitchell's song that he put together. So while they're doing the warm-up here, Mac, we will step aside. We'll let Corey's song he's developed here for the league play, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Hold your brakes, keep that bumper off my vest. Hit your marker, nice and early. Late braking isn't always best. Ease the pedal, smooth and steady. Don't When the tires start protesting and the ABS says no, that's your signal, friend, to back it, not to send it. Whoa! Hold your brakes, hold your brakes. Skip the hero, pass the test. Finish races, earn respect, and you'll always beat the rest. No more carbon fiber confetti, no more trips into the sand. Just clean laps and happy drivers. That's the fastest master plan. So if you're charging into turn one thinking, I've got this somehow, take a breath and lift a little. You'll still make the podium now. Hold your brakes, hold your brakes. Keep it clean from start to check. Every rival, every steward will be glad you showed respect. Race with patience, race with purpose. That's the way the champions race. So, hold your brakes, hold your brakes, hold your brakes, and enjoy the race. So,
Well, that might have been just absolute cinema. It chalks it up fantastically. Late breaking isn't always the best. Love hearing that. But we are going to get into your starting grid for heat race number 2. Wonderful song there. Appreciate that for sending it over. And we'll get into the grid here very, very shortly. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, top 4 inverting here. Kevin Zhu going to be on pole with Michael Brock in the 421 starting in P2. Charles Wolf and Tony Wallace will make up row number 2. Will Tony Wallace get the sweep here tonight? Thomas Lathrop and Ryan Ryder make up row number 3. We see Joe Marr in the 000 and Spencer Baudouin in the 010. He is P8. Sean Teeter and Joshua Smith make up row number 5 before we see Jack Stodola and Craig Thompson in row number 6. Kenton Bandy in the number 87. Christopher Croto in the Vans 305 making up row number 7. Michael Tanagretta P15. Nick Belasco P16. As Aaron Law in the number 468 starts in P17. Matt Bond in the pink Rexy 119 in P18. Paul Bailey in P19 with Harrison Mealy starting on the outside of row number 10. Row number 11 sees Dylan Foster and Corey Mitchell before we round out the grid with Brad Parker and Rick Wishon, which both of those drivers are not on track actually. So we're going to have 22 cars here running in race number 2. And Rob, is there anything that you think we might see in race number 2 that we didn't see in race number 1?
Well, if I'm Michael Brock, I'm going to try and get a good jump here on Kevin Zhu into turn 1 and try and put a buffer between I and Charles Wolf and Tony Wallace, those two MAV Motorsports drivers. I think that as far as strategy, that's what Michael Brock needs to do. And then I'm kind of focusing on Kenton Bandy in the mid-pack Larry's. Yeah, that strong qualifying finish. Race 1 didn't go the way he wanted, so a little bit of redemption time here for Kenton. We'll see how he can do.
Yeah, I agree. Kenton Bandy, definitely a chip on his shoulder this race, as well as Nick Belasco. If you look over at our timing tower on the left, red plate drivers are going to be your Pro Series driver. Gray plates are going to be your mid-pack Larry's, and it is a sea of gray around Nick Belasco. So he is going to have to try to muster something up here. Not only will it be a challenge passing all of his pro peers up there in the top 8, but before he does that, he's got to pass a whole slew of mid-pack Larry drivers. Coming around the final few corners here before the iRacing official safety car heads into the safety of the infield, the pit lane once again. And we will do it all over again, ladies and gentlemen. 20 minutes here to decide our second race winner here at Zandvoort for the Mazda MX5 Cup Series here on Sunday's Apex this, and you're watching it all over on Racer Nexus. We appreciate you watching. Almost 3 wide for P4, 4 wide there. It might even be 5 wide as you look at the meat of that grid there. Christopher Croto gonna be having a little bit of calamity with Harrison Mealy there in the 017. Nick Belasco also going to have some trouble heading into turns number 2 and 3. Kevin Zhu getting up where the Angels sing on that cambered corner there in that 243. Ripping St. Kitts and Nevis. Michael Brock at the helm still, but Kevin Zhu, the run, he is getting down into turns number 6 and 7. As that was something I didn't really expect to see here on the opening lap, Rob. I didn't have Kevin Zhu exploding to the front on my bingo card.
Yeah, he's got himself out there. It looks like he was shot out of a cannon through that final sector, as you mentioned, Mac. And we'll see if he's able to hold on to it as Charles Wolf has quickly got himself up into second place. So our race 1 pole sitter lost out to his teammate on the last lap after making a mistake into the second to last corner. You know he wants to come back here and try and finish what he is unfinished finish from race 1. But speaking of which, Michael Brock looking to the inside, shows the nose, not able to make a move there as Charles Wolf can have that covered up. But race 1 winner here, Tony Wallace, has his hands full with Ryan Ryder and Thomas Lathrop right in behind him early on.
Yeah, and almost a completely single file race. Kenton Bandy, the driver we touched on earlier, needed to have a good performance here in race number 2, and that unfortunately is not going to happen for him. Looking at the 818 of Dylan Foster here. We change over to Kenton Bandy in the number 87, and it's just a pile up, just maybe not expecting the car in front to slow up that much for the corner. And that's the problem when you get into these single file kind of accordion style lineups heading into the first few laps. A lot of these drivers, or not a lot of these drivers, but a lot of drivers in general, will underestimate how much you actually have to brake once you're in kind of one of those conga lines here. Tony Wallace up 1 position into P3. An amazing crossover from Ryan Ryder there, looking like Kyrie Irving in 2018 there. Crossing up Charles Wolf, and Wolf not having the greatest of starts here in race number 2. He's kind of hemorrhaging positions, but he's in a drag race down into the downhill right-hander against Ryan Ryder. And here's Thomas Lathrop, who's had quite a quiet performance here. Started heat race number 1 all the way in the back, but he managed to make quick work of the mid-pack. Larry's Kevin Zhu up front, gonna have a little bit of a moment, but he is gonna catch it. And the heat race number 2, we saw a single file in the first lap, Rob, but now they look to be doubled up 2 by 2. They are going for some positions.
Yeah, I guess they used heat race number 1 to figure out where they can make some moves here, Mac, because nobody's wasting any time. But through all that, Michael Brock has got himself out front, but feeling a ton of pressure from Tony Wallace. And I think it was Charles Wolf, his whole set of circumstances there, they got him into that pack a little farther back. Was he blue turn 1, tried to drive it deep into the corner, had to go out wide. And that allowed Ryan Ryder, Thomas Lathrop to close right up on the back of him and put a ton of pressure on him. But Wolf was able to get around Kevin Zhu and put a little buffer now between him and those cars behind. But we still got a pack that looks like it stretches all the way back to, I believe, Craig Thompson. Joshua Smith, I believe, is the final car in this pack. So first place all the way back to 11th, still in this lead pack.
Yeah, only going to be separated by 2.62 seconds. And now we've got Jay Smooth actually setting the fastest lap with a 152.811 before Jack Stodola beats it with a 152.796. We'll have to see how these laps fare compared to heat race number 1. I don't believe we've had any track temperature change. We've actually had a 2-degree difference in the air temperature, so maybe throughout this race the track temperature won't see exactly how hot it got in heat race number 1, but with all these Miatas throwing down rubber, it's gonna do nothing but climb. Kevin Zhu trying to get back on the right track after that little mishap he had. Tony Wallace in P2 now has a pretty decent gap from him to leader Michael Brock. As we see there, Ryan Ryder trying to make something work there on the 243 of Kevin Zhu, but much like we've said for the entirety of the night, it's just going to be really, really difficult to overtake. Joe Marr is going to be around, and it looks like that might have been contact shared with the 117 of Sean Teeter. Sean Teeter going to take the rally course around the corner there, and he is unfortunately not really able to get the car going back how he wanted to. We'll take another look here, 3 wide with him and Spencer Beaudoin, and unfortunately that's just going to be Sean Teeter kind of getting into Joe Marr there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was netcode or what. They look like they were fairly far apart and then just kind of... Oh, no, it looks like Teeter, you're right. Teeter did kind of move to the right there to try and open up that corner. Unfortunately, Joseph Marr was still there. We talked about how good of a showing Joseph Marr had in heat number 1. He's not going to be happy with that, no doubt.
Michael Brock, your current leader, not even needing the draft. He runs a 151.741. You rarely see that here at Zandvoort, your lead car running the fastest lap. We'll have to see if it sticks, but Tony Wallace, you can tell, really wants to get up there, really wants to be putting the pressure onto the 421 of Michael Brock, but Charles Wolf, who has now kind of gained the positions back that he might have hemorrhaged in those first few laps, he will be looking to apply some pressure as well. And much like heat race number 1, it looks like it might boil down to these 3 front drivers, Brock, Wallace, and Wolf. But hey, Kevin Zhu, Ryan Ryder, Thomas Lathrop, they have got a little bit to say about that as well. You can never count them out, especially that number 84 white and purple of Thomas Lathrop, rising edge, and he is going to try to rise to the occasion and get around Ryan Ryder here, but not going to have the inside for the uncambered left-hand turn, and that is going to spell trouble for Thomas Lathrop. If he cannot get himself into the right position, he'll never really have a chance to overtake Ryan Ryder. We look at Craig Thompson here, and he is feeling kind of the same amount of pressure. Josh Smith in front of him, Jack Stodola behind him. Those 2 drivers not very unfamiliar with wrestling, jockeying for position as well. I'd classify both those drivers as more offensive than defensive. So it's going to be very, very tricky here for him.
Yeah, Beaudoin is a pro class driver just ahead of this, well, leading this pack, but the next 4 in behind here, Mac, all in the mid-pack Larry's class. So they are battling for championship points here, as we see Joshua Smith going to have to defend Craig Thompson on the inside. Jack Stodola trying to go with them. Stodola going to be unable to move up the inside. Smith looks like he's getting a nice run through the outside of turn 1. Should be able to hold onto that spot. Is going to come back to his benefit here through the quick little right-hand sweeper and then the fast NASCAR-style bend here into turn 3, and that's where we see Joshua Smith back out front.
Yeah, Joshua Smith been very sound, very elegant in the way that he has been driving the Miata here tonight. He has been very, very clean with his cornering. He has not really wrestled or gambled too much with how he handles the car, and you notice that especially in these Miatas, they have a lot of body roll, a lot of weight shift, a lot of noticeable weight shift in these chassis. So when you see someone just planted, the car bending in all the right ways, rolling in all the right directions on that chassis, you can really appreciate the smoothness, and that's exactly what Joshua Smith is bringing us here. And another driver in this front pack that you notice that with is going to be that 243 of Kevin Zhu. He is very, very in control of his car throughout these corners, and you can just tell the demeanor of the car completely under control, taking those 2 corners a little better than Charles Wolf here, so the pressure will be on for our 3rd place driver here.
Yeah, I wonder if Charles Wolf doing a little more mirror watching versus looking out his windshield here, Mac. We've seen him a couple of unforced errors so far in this race, and generally that kind of comes when you're in a pack like this. You just happen to be focusing on the driver in behind you, trying to be a little more defensive instead of being on the offense here, trying to get around his teammate Tony Wallace, who is now making a move on the outside of Michael Brock. We've seen the move work here on the outside of turn one a number of times here, but can Wallace make it stick? The important factor here is through this next right-hand sweeper. He can hold on to that spot versus Michael Brock running around the top side. Looks like Tony Wallace going to get some to top spot as he throws a little bit of a block up on Michael Brock. Michael Brock going to try that crossover we saw Ryan Ryder pull earlier, but not going to work to his benefit as Charles Wolf now has the nose up the inside.
Yeah, very, very good fighting here between Tony Wallace and Michael Brock. Charles Wolf has nothing but angst and yearn for getting himself into this position as well. He said, hey boys, I see y'all fighting up there. I would like to enter that, but Charles Wolf has to worry about Kevin Zhu here in the 243, and the more they battle, that's just going to allow Ryan Ryder to insert himself into this lead picture, into this hunt for total grid ascension, as Tony Wallace, like we saw earlier, turn number one into turn number three, and that might have looked like a tiny bit of contact, Rob. It kind of felt like the car kind of snapped into that oversteer rather than gently went out, but not entirely sure. We'll go back and take a look. It just seemed like a very jarring step out, as no, okay, absolutely no contact. Okay, that was just complete snap oversteer, and you do experience that a little bit with this Miatas, but it's, in my experience, a little more gradual, a little more pronounced, rather than just that jarring instant step out that you would see in like a GT3 or maybe a GTE car.
Yeah, it could have something to do with the track temps we're seeing too as well. With the scorching hot track temps, the tires are going to get a little greasy and you get offline and into the marbles here, Mac, and it wouldn't be all that surprising, I guess. These cars aren't super horsepower heavy like you said, but they do have enough power to break the wheels loose, and as we just saw Ryan Ryder, but a nice save for him. Far too often we've seen drivers not be able to save that. The back end of the car snap around, and what was a good race going down the wayside here. It looks like Spencer Bodway's dropped a couple spots into turn one. I'm not sure if there's contact there, but he's going to lose spots to Stodola and Tanagretta, who are now battling up through turn three.
Yeah, battling for that final spot on the mid-pack Larry podium. Tanagretta with, let's just be honest, not the most optimistic, not the best, most optimal season for him so far. And we know I only touch on that because I know the pace that Michael Tanagretta has. I know what he can do out here on the racetrack on the iRacing official service. So would love to see him kind of kick it into that gear that we all know he can send it to. Corey Mitchell in the number 63 here. Road to redemption for him. And it is going to start with hopefully a pass here on Harrison Mealy. There's Aaron Law in the white and pink 468. Who is always going to be a difficult overtake, not for, the reason that he might be dangerous or he might swerve on you, but he is just a very good defensive driver. And you see it with Christopher Croto in the 305 Vans Miata as well. I love that these two are paired up on the grid, battling it out right now, because these two are definitely, probably, I would say, in the most amount of exchange for overtakes. They always have a battle going on. They are always being put on with some sort of pressure from the back, but they are very, very good at defending their position. The two best in the mid-pack Larrys, in my opinion. These guys just always know where to put their car. Down into turn number one, Harrison Mealy going to swing out to the outside. We got a pass for the lead in our pro division with Michael Brock, our new overall leader. Him and Wallace have been switching, and must have been just commentator's curse, because Harrison Mealy gets around Aaron Law with ease there in turn number one. And the other driver, the Vans 305 of Christopher Croto, I thought might be bearing the same fate, but he is going to defend that position as well. Back up to the front, Michael Brock, Tony Wallace, Charles Wolf going to be your top three, but Thomas Lathrop very, very close in behind in that best of the rest 4th position. Michael Brock taking a little bit of curbing there on the entry of that corner. I can't imagine that's going to be optimal for him, as I'm sure with the track being this hot, the air being this hot, those curbs are like ice to be on.
Yeah, it's one of those times where it might feel like you're driving in the rain, Mac, with how slippery those curbs would be. Although you're looking up, you're not seeing anything but sun, but just greasy, no grip out there. It's one of the things that you don't actually realize. And a lot of these curbs, the 3D curbs that iRacing has now, ZANDVOORT has those 3D curbs where they're kind of like a reverse shark tooth, but you get up on it and it's not smooth. The tire and suspension is going to be bouncing around, and that's where we saw Ryan Ryder have his incident. He got up on the curb, car got a little squirrely, so these drivers are going to have to be very leery of that, especially with the high track temps, the greasy tires. That could be a little more prevalent here in this race.
Yeah, Michael Brock still going to be in your lead, just south of 5 minutes remaining. And we'll have probably 3 more laps remaining here at Zandvoort race number 2. And we're seeing a lot more competition for the lead. It was a 3-car race in race number 1. It has now turned into a 6-car race in heat race number 2 here. Kevin Zhu going to be at the back of that grid. He started this race in the pole position down into P6. He's going to try to get something done on the 1010 Motorsports driver of Ryan Ryder here as we approach the descending turns number 6 and 7. It's important that you're on the brake as little as possible here. You want to keep that minimum speed as high as you can in these Miatas, because these next 2 corners very, very important. You got to get that speed to maintain that flow, and that's something we've seen Tony Wallace do very, very well here. But I said in heat race number 1, Rob, that the latter half of this lap of this circuit Michael Brock was struggling at, he has really seemed to reel it in, and he is starting to get very, very quick at all turns of this track. So race number 2, looks like Brock might be the man of the hour here.
Yeah, they had that 3-minute warm-up in between. I wonder if he took some time, Mac, to go back and have a look at maybe the laps that Tony Wallace and Charles Wolfe were putting in that sector where he was struggling a little bit, trying to find out where they were carrying a little more pace through some corners. Maybe they were braking in a little different section than he was. But whatever he's done here in between these 2 races, as you mentioned, looks like he's found the answer to the time he was missing in those sectors.
Yeah, he has been very, very good here through race number 2, and it's a shame that we're not seeing a few more overtake attempts. I do believe Tony Wallace, with his strength through turns 2 to 7, I really do think Tony Wallace might have something to say, might have a little bit of resistance to put up towards Michael Brock. And we saw it in race number 1. He was not afraid to kind of step out there and go for the overtake. And I think that might just speak to what we just got done talking about. Michael Brock's ability, or I guess elevated ability here in race number 2, to put together a good lap, especially on the back half of that circuit. As we look now towards Aaron Law in the 468, trying to get by Corey Mitchell, that road to redemption number 63, going to be on the left side of the track, right side of your screen, as a little bit of curve cutting, a little bit of corner cutting, I should say, going up the hill there. And I noticed Kevin Zhu doing it. I guess it doesn't necessarily break track limits, but I do know in FIA series, like, when GT3s race here, or definitely Formula 1 cars race here, that is a big no-no. You cannot cut the corner on that, kind of extended right-hand turn before we get down into our descent turns number 6 and 7. Liquid Molly 235 of Joshua Smith, fantastic job. He leads a pack of 5 here, and he is going to be your leader in our mid-pack Larry's division. Michael Brock going to be leading the pro division. There's Spencer Baudouin, who also just made an overtake on Craig Thompson, and Craig Thompson just managed to disappear. As we see, he has the meatball flag, and ooh, very, very hard hit into our tire barrier there. And that stinks because Thompson was leading the mid-pack Larry division for just a tiny bit here in this race. He was well on his way to getting a win here in race number 2. Not going to be how he wants to end his night. White flag is in the air. This will be our last time around, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Brock, Tony Wallace, Charles Wolf, before we get into Thomas Lathrop and Ryan Ryder, rounding out your top 5 overall and for the Pro Series. Jack Stodola in the 406 going to be leading the mid-pack Larrys. It's a big battle between the front 3 in both classes, Rob. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this race boils down into those last 2 corners and the final straight to the checkered.
Yeah, I said at the end of heat race number 1 where I thought Michael Brock was trying to hold back to get himself up into top spot for the final lap. This time he came in leading the lap, was able to hold off, and he moved from Wallace and Wolf. And only with a few more corners to go, this is where we saw Charles Wolf have his issue in heat race number 1. Michael Brock going to get through there well. Tony Wallace not going to be able to pounce him here. So all it is one more big sweeping right-hand corner here for Michael Brock to avenge his race 1 defeat.
Yeah, and it looks like he might be well on his way. Tony Wallace in the 78. Thomas Lathrop taking a little bit of a field trip through the sand there. Coming out of our final corner, Jack Stodola has a black flag. That is going to result in him not placing on the podium. Michael Brock is going to take race 2 victory here with Tony Wallace and Charles Wolf rounding out the podium. So a first and second for Wallace on the night, going to be good for his championship hunt. Michael Tannegretta. Wow, I didn't even notice it. But I had just said I knew he could kick it into that gear, and he gets himself a mid-pack Larry win. Christopher Croto in the Vans 305 coming home in P2 for that class. Harrison Mealy going to end up on the podium as well. Fantastic stuff from Michael Tannegretta. And there was a whole lot of just chaos, it looked like, on the timing tower. Going back to that final lap for the mid-pack Larrys. Here's Jack Stodola, who actually got a black flag off penalty count, I believe.
Oh, he just lost the back end.
Yeah, going to be a spin there from him, and that...
Oh, Joshua Smith spun as well, same time.
Yeah, Liquid Molly 235 of Jay Smooth. Going to be feeling the same sort of effects there. Not good for those 2 drivers. They were both on their way to a very, very good race finish here tonight. Oh, man, you do not want to see that out of those drivers. That is very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunate way to end the race, especially leading class, like you said, Jack Stodola. He's going to be shaking his head at that one over a long while here, Mac.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate for him. And it's those last lap spins that will really have you wanting to break your monitor here. But we're going to go over the feature results for the pro class here. Michael Brock going to be taking victory here in race number 2 with Tony Wallace in P2. Charles Wolf going to round out the podium in P3 before we get into Thomas Lathrop, Ryan Ryder, your 2 other drivers in the top 5. And then it's Kevin Zhu, Spencer Baudoin, Nick Belasco, and Joe Marr rounding out the grid. For your mid-pack Larrys, Michael Tannegretta in the number 200 going to claim victory here. Well done to him. Christopher Croto in the Vans 305, Harrison Mealy in the 017 flanking him on the podium. Aaron Law in the 468 will finish in P4. Corey Mitchell in P5 before we get into Sean Teeter, Jay Smooth, Matt Bond, Kenton Bandy, Paul Bailey, Jack Stodola, Craig Thompson, Dylan Foster, then Brad Parker, Rick Washon not taking to the track. Fantastic runs here tonight from all the drivers in the Apex this Mazda Sunday series. I see Jen in chat. I'm not jinxing. He got it done, Jen. Don't worry about it. He's not in the doghouse tonight. Although race number 1 could have definitely gone his way, he made good on those wrongs. Claimed victory here in race number 2.
Looks like we got a couple drivers in the room here, Mac. So we got race 1 winner Tony Wallace, and then race 2 mid-pack Larry winner Michael Tanagretta. Who do you want to talk to first?
Let's talk to Michael Tanagretta, man. That 200 driver of Michael Tanagretta. Now, I won't lie, Michael. I said a little earlier on in the night, I said, you know, we know the gear that Michael Tanagretta can kick it into. We know the pace that he can show, even though it might not have been on display throughout the entirety of this season so far. But you go out, you get a win here in race number 2 here at Zandvoort. How's it feel?
Good, nerve-wracking. I had a feeling something was going to happen in that last lap or two. It was very close to the end. I was happy that it came out untouched, but very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, very nerve-wracking. I would 100% agree with you, because this track is so hard to overtake on, especially in these low-powered cars like the Miatas. How does it, you know, kind of contribute to the composure, to the mental fortitude when you're on a track like this? Because I imagine with it being so hard to overtake, every single corner means so much, and you just cannot make a singular mistake or you will be at the back of the grid. So, you know, how did it feel out there, and did it weigh heavy on your mind just knowing that you had to, you know, kind of be perfect?
Yeah, especially it did kind of get me down in the first one. I think starting closer towards the back, I knew I had to work my way up. I got stuck in a little bit in the mid pack, but yeah, every single turn you got to plan for 3 turns ahead. Turn 1 you got to plan 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way through the bowl downhill, just because that's where your run's going to start. And every single one you have to plan 2, 3 turns ahead, because that's basically where everybody, if you make a mistake, that's where everybody else is going to start catching you, and it's going to ruin your line. But other than that, it went really, really well.
Yeah, I think it went well for you as well. You got it done here in race number 2. Now, I do have to ask, need to look forward just a tiny bit in our schedule. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here of season number 28. You've got an Italian doubleheader. You've got Spa, but before all that, we head to St. Petersburg, which, as you know, last season was a quite chaotic and eventful race. How will something like this, a win here, help you heading to St. Petersburg?
Definitely will help for sure. St. Petersburg is probably in like my top 5 favorite, but not like crazy pace-wise. Definitely just have to keep clean, keep mindful. I know a lot of places are going to be a lot of dives. Calculated dives, but very aggressive, especially in that mid section. Very, very tight, very calculated, and is kind of the same thing, just on a smaller scale compared to Zandvoort, where you got to plan 2, 3 turns in ahead and ensure everything goes almost perfect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree. I think it's going to be very, very fun to watch here when we tune in next Sunday night here live on Racer Nexus. Well, Michael, you managed to pull it into victory lane here at Zandvoort. There's only one other thing to do. Who do you have to shout out or thank for the performance here tonight?
Mainly just you guys. I greatly appreciate that you guys put on the broadcast. Love to be able to watch it back weeks on end. Apex Host for putting on the league. These guys are crazy people to run with for sure. And you for broadcasting for sure. But other than that, that's all I got.
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate the kind words up here at Racing Nexus as always. That is going to be your race 2 mid-pack Larry winner, Michael Tanagretta, in the number 200 Miata. And I believe Mr. Rob Campbell is caught up here with our winner of race number 1, Tony Wallace.
Welcome in, Tony. You showed us how it was done in race number 1. Couldn't quite get it done in race number 2. You had to settle for second place, but overall, I guess that's a 1.5 result for you at Zandvoort. What you were expecting coming into this one?
I was just expecting to be on the podium. I was hoping that I could squeeze in another first place. It was a nice surprise that I was able to pull off that first place. A nice little drag race with Charles Wolf to the line. He had a little bit of a bobble, so I took advantage of it and made the move, and it kind of worked out in my favor. Sadly, I just couldn't get around Brock in the second race. A little flustered with it, but it's all good. We raced hard, and race 2, it is what it is, and I'm just happy to be on that podium and continuing to earn some points towards the championship. So hopefully I could be on the podium overall for the season.
We had talked in qualifying how important it was going to be to get yourself up at the sharp end of the field, because there's no real overtaking opportunities here other than into turn 1. Very flowy track with not a whole lot of heavy braking sections. How important was that here tonight to get yourself a good starting position for both races?
I knew if I could qualify in top 4, then I would be in good contention for that podium. After that, it's kind of hit or miss. As you could tell in the second race, we had 5 or 6 guys with us, and the positions didn't change much, and we kind of stayed pretty much in a line the entire race. And we kind of lucked out in the first race where the top 3 kind of broke apart. But yeah, so as you could, like you said, there's not many passing opportunities, so I knew that getting that good qualifying run in would be big.
Next week we head to St. Pete, a track that has very tight first couple corners on it. So again, qualifying going to be important. You don't want to be sitting mid-pack heading into that. Who knows what you're going to see coming through turn 1. But how are you feeling about heading to South Florida for doing a little racing next week in the Mazdas?
I really do like St. Pete. I like the street course racing. It's very tight, and I'm fairly decent at St. Pete, so we will see what I could make happen there. Like I said, I'm just shooting to be on that podium every race. It doesn't need to be first place, but first place is a nice blessing.
Excellent stuff. I think it's all been chalked up to switching to the Dr. Pepper livery here. That's been the catalyst to your success this season, Tony. So a little Dr. Pepper action, a little bit extra pep in your step on the throttle pedal. But before we let you go here, give us any shout outs you want to give. And I know you've got your own Mazda League that you started up this season too as well. That probably has been helping you a little bit getting ready each week here to do battle in Apex this.
Yeah, I'm mainly managing that league. I don't get to race in that. I get to just kind of oversee and take a step back, but it gives me more appreciation for the guys here at Apex and for you putting on this broadcast. So I really, really appreciate that. So I really, I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to race, and I thank God every day that I could be able to do stuff like this. It's a huge blessing.
Excellent stuff. Well, best of luck heading to St. Pete next week, Tony. No doubt we'll see you battling up with the likes of Michael Brock, Charles Wolf, Thomas Lathrop, Ryan Ryder, Joshua Soto, Lemke, whoever shows up next week. We always see you battling up at the front. So take care, and we'll see you then.
See you. Thank you.
And it looks like our race winner for race number 2 has popped in last second here, Mac, to catch up with you.
Yes, sir. Michael Brock, race number 2 winner. Mac up in the booth. You had a copy?
Yep. I can hear you guys. How you doing?
Doing good, Michael, as I'm sure you are too. Now, I just got to know, first things first, Tony Wallace was absurdly quick here tonight in race number 1. However, race number 2, you took that helm. You took home fastest lap. You took it home by exactly a 10th. Over Tony Wallace. And when it comes to, besting the Titans here at the top of Apex this, a 10th is a long way. You were rapid here. What changed from race number 1 to race number 2 to give you all that speed?
Oh, I don't know. So it was kind of like a toss. Like Charles, Tony, and I were all pretty much similar place. So man, it's just such a hard place to pass. So it's really just like the last few laps. It's kind of like position is like the most important. There's a few corners where you kind of have to defend, and once you have that, it's really, really difficult for someone to pass. But I would say the first race 2, I think I was in second behind Charles, and we what happened? We went like side by side into the bowl, and then we kind of touched, and it gave me a bobble, and then that kind of gave Tony a run so we could catch up to Charles, and then I think he got a run out of the last corner from him, and they had the kind of like a drag race to the end, so it was kind of cool. Yeah, race 2, I just kind of I was being I don't know. I just was getting more of a flow of kind of like how to race this place through the first race. So the second, I was kind of just being cognizant of where matters and where it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, without a doubt, race number 2, it was pretty much your playground. You were very, very quick, especially in the latter half of that circuit. I think in race number 1, you struggled just a little bit in those final few corners on the second half of the lap. You tidied that up here for race number 2, and I talked about it with our first interviewer. I believe it was, well, now I've gone blank on who I interviewed first. Tannegretta, yes, Michael Tannegretta, of course. I said composure and mental fortitude was kind of the name of the game here because of how hard it was to pass. But for you, it just almost seemed like brute force. I mean, in the nicest way possible. In no way were you a weapon or, dirty out on the racetrack, but you just kind of ran rampant over them. And I just want to know, throughout the season, you've had multiple battles. You have it with Brian Lemke. You have it with Joshua Soto. Both of those drivers not here tonight. So Tony Wallace decided to step up with the hot form that he has been on. So what's it like whenever, the roster, the car count might not be the highest, but you're still getting that very, very good battle up front? What's that say to, the league and the elevation of talent as we get further on in the season?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, ever since I've known Charles, he's been super fast. So, and then Tony, he's been climbing like crazy. So he's been doing awesome. So, hats off to them. And then I also want to point out, I think Lathrop, I'm looking at the thing right now. Did he start 22nd and then he ended like P4 in race 1. So that's pretty. I mean, if that's true, that's a hell of a run. But so yeah, I mean, I'll have to point him out as far as pace. And then I don't know. There's a whole bunch of other guys that are just like climbing and climbing and climbing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone can do. And man, I really I want more and more people, to be faster than me, honestly, because then I can learn something. So I'm excited to see what people could do in the future.
Yeah, and now finally we're getting into that, home stretch, I guess you could say, of season number 28 here. It has been a season that has been very, very nice to you. And as we head to our final few rounds, we've got St. Petersburg. We've got the dual race in Italy with Imola and Monza. And then we head to Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. Those tracks, they're very, very different week to week. They're not going to race the same. What's it like? How are you feeling? And are you confident heading into these final 4 rounds?
Yeah, no, that's a fun track. I think that's a pretty new one too. I think it came out last year or something. But yeah, so we had last season or two. We had it's St. Pete, right? Yeah, so we had St. Pete, and it's such a tight course and there's so many walls. We were like assuming that it was just gonna be a wreck fest, and I think it, if my memory serves me right, I think it was like one of the cleanest races ever. Probably of all season or something, just because like everyone's kind of like worried about hitting walls and stuff. So I don't know. Hopefully it's like that where it's not a wreck fest, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see, and I'm sure you are going to be competing for wins at all of those tracks. You have been rapid throughout the season. Before we let you go and let you celebrate the race number 2 victory and the stretch more than likely in the championship hunt, is there anybody you would like to shout out or thank for tonight's performance?
Yeah, I got to thank my number 1 and favorite fan, and maybe only fan, Jen. Thanks for being my cheerleader. And everyone else at Apex this, and you guys in the booth, and look forward to doing this every week. So we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. We appreciate the kind words, Mr. Brock. We're going to let you get out of here and celebrate your race number 2 winner in the number 421 Miata. It's Michael Brock. And whew, what a fantastic race, running of races, both of them very, very electric, very, very entertaining here tonight, Rob. And any final departing words from you before we close the show?
It was Zandvoort's going to Zandvoort, as we mentioned a number of times. Nowhere really to pass other than turn one, but that's going to change for the next 4 weeks, as you mentioned, coming ahead. They've got some 3 of the next 4 races they're going to say are basically pinnacle races that you're going to find on any league across iRacing, cross sim racing, and racing in general. The drivers just look forward to Imola, Monza, and Spa. Going to test the drivers and could put a twist in anybody's championship hopes here. One bad race there, or a couple of bad races that night at any one of those tracks could really put a shunt in their championship hopes.
Yeah, without a doubt, it is going to be very, very cool to see these drivers take these Miatas to those tracks that are going to invite overtaking just a tiny more. To remind you, ladies and gentlemen, my name Mac Nelson, Rob Campbell, the big boss man, up in the production slot there, making everything look pretty on your screen. And remember, big shout out to Apex Sim Racing. Go on their website, apexsimracingshop.com, I believe it is. Use code RacerNexus, 5% off. They've got bundles. You can build bundles through the most favorite and best sim racing manufacturers on the market. You got Fanatec, you got Moza, you got Sim Magic, I do believe. I don't think you can build bundles with SimuCube, but I do believe they offer some SimuCube products. I know they are hot in the press right now. People are loving their stuff. Big shout out to Track Cams for Gourmets as well. TrackCams22.com. They provide all the car and track cameras that you see here tonight and across all the Racer Nexus broadcast. Also, big shout out to Apex This, obviously. Without them, well, I mean, simply you wouldn't be hearing us right now. Next race going to be August the 16th down in St. Petersburg. Going to be a fantastic show there tonight. And I do believe our other shows here on the Racer Nexus channel are probably going to be wrapping up as well. But we do have the FMA Gen 4 Series Week 8 at Martinsville on right now, as well as the High Point Racing GT World Challenge Round 4 from the beautiful 305 Miami International Autodrome. And that, no doubt, going to be a fun watch. So if you're interested, go check out those broadcasts. But from everyone up here in the booth, everyone around the world of Apex This and around the world of the iRacing official service, we wish you guys a very, very good Sunday night. Hope you have a fantastic work week. Kick it in the butt. I don't know what to say. Just make the week yours, gentlemen and ladies. And take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We'll see you in the next one.